Hey, hey, hey.
Hey. Happy Friday, everybody.
Friday.
All right, that was a little affected. I'm Heather Holdridge,
I'm Larry Quinn.
and welcome to Cocktails and Conversation. This, obviously, on the Friday of a short week, a blessedly short week, and yet...
I don't like
No?
short weeks. It's too busy on Tuesday. Like you get Monday off and Tuesday sucks.
Oh my God, we are going to add, this was not a planned talking point, but we need to talk about this because I like this because it's a double winner because you get both the long weekend, 3 days, and you have the short week. It's a double win.
I agree with that. And the week goes by fast, but you pay for it on Tuesday. Ugh. And that may be worth it.
It's worth it.
I think it's worth it. You're right. It's worth it. I just like to bitch. So
don't I know it? Okay. So I know, Larry, you are not in your normal place. So we didn't have like bespoke planned cocktail this week. And I am going like super basic and super simple because I'm lazy and tired. So I'm just going to do a gin and tonic. Larry, what sort of MacGyver cocktail are you conjuring from a hotel room?
So I'm traveling, folks. I'm in a grim hotel room, and I'm so happy I actually have real glass. I was worried about plastic cups, but I picked this up along the way from the plane. So I have some Buffalo Trace bourbon. I carried with me, the only thing I had to carry were these wild cherry bitters and orange oil. I have sugar packet.
You didn't get stopped by TSA?
No, I have sugar packet from the room. And I'm going to put together an old-fashioned with bourbon, which is the only – normally I make it with rye, but, you do what you got to do. So I think it's going to be good. So I'm just dropping a sugar packet in and
you can't get rye on the plane, right? So I'm going to do – I actually put a little orange bitters sometimes.
It's nice.
On this.
So here's –
okay. Well, while we're putting together cocktails I think we should probably start with the news of the day, which was the sort of hastily scheduled, or at least hastily announced, press conference in the Oval with Elon and Trump. Sort of like the farewell.
Yeah, it was weird. Wasn't that weird?
I saw.
It was always weird.
Well, because Elon's weird.
He's weird.
But the thing that I took away from it, and this is after all week when Elon was, doing the pity party farewell, media interviews, like, boo-hoo, I was treated so badly. They came after my companies.
Oh, whatever.
So sad, kind of thing. All I ever wanted to do was help kind of stuff. And then, so you're like, all right, see you later. Don't let the door hit you, even though Doge still remains, which I think is important to note. But Trump's like, oh, well, he's not really going away. You're like.
Yeah, he's like, I'm out. By the way, I hate your bill. It sucks.
Yeah, I hate your bill.
We're doing all this great work. Elon Musk Doge is doing all this great work. And then you guys are fucking it up with your bill.
Yeah.
It's basically what happened. It's weird. And he's still around. And, the thing is, you mentioned this before, the consequences and the downstream effects will be, we have no idea what's going to happen because there's the data that has been taken and used and infiltrated by them. And, and all that stuff. And the other things that they're doing, I just read, there was actually a recent New York Times article about Palantir. It's not a Musk company, it's a Peter Thiel company, but they got a gigantic hundreds of million contract to start like consolidating all American data into one place, which on the surface you're like, okay, that makes sense, except for it only makes sense if you trust the people who have access to it. And that's
100%.
And then Musk has been doing the same thing, right? They've been trying to gather data. So it is an uncomfortable thing where maybe in the business world, that makes a ton of sense, right? That's why Palantir is making so much money and they're growing so much. But like when it becomes people's personal information, it can be either weaponized, which we've seen this administration do, by any administration, right? Let's take Trump out of this. It's like, who really wants? And by the way, the libertarians, the many, many libertarians that are pro-Trump certainly can't like that, right?
Oh, no.
100% against that.
Well, but let's back up a step, because I'm not sure that people fully understand that all of your tax data through the IRS, your Social Security data, your employment data that Treasury has, because they have access to your W-2s and the employment information, all of these, your health data, right? HIPAA, right? All of that stuff is sort of siloed by design. And there are all sorts of checks and balances that were built up. Doge has most certainly broken the law in the course of its, making its way through every agency and government. You might have seen there were lawsuits like trying to block access to the databases from these, 25-year-old Doge kids and all of that. And eventually they got access to most of it, having been trained on the data. That data, to your point, is gone and it's never coming back. But the Palantir thing is scarier to me.
Yes.
Because it is essentially, I just finished watching Andor, and it's almost like they're building like a Death Star it's like a Death Star of data.
Right. Exactly. It's movie stuff.
Yes.
It very much is movie stuff.
It's scary stuff.
Patriot games, that sort of stuff.
Well, Patriot Games is adorable compared to this. But wasn't that the one with the guy? Was that the
all
one
started being this. I can't remember. We're too old to remember the specifics, to be honest.
Because it's like a 35-year-old movie. But the one other point I want to make, because I actually saw this, I was looking up information in preparation for this. And so I went to the doge.gov website, and it's basically a series of expos, right, that they've, pulled into this one page. And there was a tweet from Doge lifting up that the Louisiana Secretary of State is now implementing the use of a database that Doge created to make sure they're verifying voter information and making sure there are no non-citizens voting. Okay. First of all, the federal government, that's not the federal government's job. That's the individual state's job. And for you and I, we've been involved in politics in the past, right? The ways in which states do that is through individual relationships that is not controlled, nor is it overseen by the federal government in any way. And so they have conveniently called this the Save List or something like that, but which is the same name as the bill that Republicans in Congress have been considering, right? Which would actually, potentially take the rights of 20 million women away to cast votes because of the proof of citizenship that you would have to provide in order to get registered.
Right. I can't wait for the result of that being no woman taking a man's name. That'll make the men really happy.
Yeah. Wait. The backlash for the backlash is going to be pretty intense. But this is some scary stuff. I'm not actually sure that it's legal. But
and it's just happening, though. That's the thing. It is just, it's moving along. And again, like I said, it's there are virtues of it in certain spaces. In the governmental space, where, especially in an environment where things are being weaponized against people, it is right to be concerned and have conspiracy theories, in my opinion.
Yes, well, we're living through the real life, like Parallax View and 3 Days of the Condor. I will be Warren Beatty, maybe. No, Faye Dunaway. I'm Faye Dunaway, and you can be Redford. How about that?
Hey, you know what? If I were Robert Redford,
you know what I'm talking about. It's fine.
I'd take that any day.
That's fine. So I do, before we move on from Elon, I do think it's worth noting that, Elon, less than 2 weeks before Trump was inaugurated, Elon promised $2 trillion in savings. We have, of course, whittled that down to roughly $160 billion. And it's that's probably overstated.
Right.
So,
no, 100%. I mean, they were caught lying left and right on this shit.
Right. But the destruction remains. I think that's the point. It's like, not only did they not fulfill what a lot of people were like, hey, there is waste, fraud, and abuse. But what has happened instead is a lot of destruction, a lot of overtaking of government functions, in some cases illegally, or government property. And I'm talking about data, which is actually our data. And what did we get for it? Not savings.
Right. No, destruction. But the point is, like, I think this is what people unfortunately will not understand. It is hard to run a country.
Yeah.
300 million plus people. This is not running a company, and you get to, like, this is much bigger than that. And it costs money to do that and do that properly. The idea that there's waste, people just assume like it's because it's so big that it must be so big because of waste. No, it's big because we're the biggest economy in the world with the biggest responsibilities, and we should embrace that, right? And I think that's one of those things that people are like, oh, well, how are you? Well, of course, try doing anything on the cheap, and it's not going to work. And I think everyone can agree. And that's the thing with Democrats. I think we have to sort of understand, it's like people support the idea of getting rid of, and we all should, getting rid of waste and corruption. I think
we'll come to that.
Very happy if we were getting rid of that. But I think the voters and citizens actually are on that side. So like, it's a good story until like the story actually doesn't have the actual ending.
Yeah.
The payoff. There's no payoff to the story.
So unfortunately, there is a payoff, but it's,
fair.
Individual pockets.
I wish.
I want to jump on to RFK Jr., Secretary of Health and Human Services. It's been a busy few weeks. And I think there was a question of, well, how much damage could we do? And I think we're really starting to see, and this isn't even yet the impact on human lives, but we already have seen the elimination of billions of dollars in contracts for cancer research and other diseases that benefit people, and that make their lives better or prolong their lives. So we'd already seen that. But in the last week, RFK, in a video with the head of the NIH, Jay Pataracha, and the head of the FDA, Marty Makary, they announced that the CDC, note that neither of them is from the CDC, were eliminating the recommendation for COVID vaccines for pregnant women and healthy children. Well, the CDC wasn't consulted on that.
No, they were like,
Yeah, the CDC wasn't consulted. So this week, the CDC got its revenge because they just sent out their updated guidelines and said, well, actually, no, we are recommending it, and you should talk to your provider and figure out if it's something you want to do.
The thing is, like, that recommendation from them just had no basis on anything other than they felt like it, which is a recurring theme.
Well, but the theme is that RFK has a very fixed ideological point of view about vaccines that is not scientifically based. And he is claiming there is no scientific basis for the recommendations that he's canceling. And yet
he has none.
Right.
And so
the CDC said, well, actually, no, this is beneficial.
No, but that's the thing about these dudes who are are very privileged in sort of their backgrounds and what they're exposed to. It's sort of like, well, it can't be wrong if this is what I believe, because, I'm sort of privileged and I'm an elite person. The irony of all this, whether it's Trump or RFK, is like they all come from these spaces where they just get reinforced constantly. So if they have a point of view, they believe it has to be right because they are anointed.
Yes.
Eric Adams thinks that too, but that's a whole different conversation. But it's just like, but it comes through. It comes through constantly about it. It was like, well, then, or my friend told me this, and my friend is also a rich elite individual. So if they told me that, then it's got to be true. There's no piece of science done by some person I don't know who doesn't hang out with me at the clubs or hang out with me in these, very elite spaces. Well, why does that matter when the rando that I met, at the bar, at the club told me this? And it's such a weird way to live, actually.
Sure. Well, I think the problem is that these are going to have downstream effects for real everyday Americans, right?
Absolutely. And
I
already has, right?
Right. Well, it's going to be interesting to see if RFK saying we're not recommending this, the CDC saying actually, no, yes, we are. And what are the insurance companies going to do who cover?
Right. When they say you don't have to do it anymore, we don't recommend it, they're more than happy not to pay for it.
Correct.
Right. And they'll use any excuse not to pay for it. And that's going to be brutal. And so even if people want access, they're going to have some issues with that. But yeah, it's like this type of stuff has downstream effects. When someone has the platform that he's been given, it causes kids dying in Texas and New Mexico with, from measles, which hasn't happened in decades. And this will be no different. I just read a recent article talking about there is a trending aspect of why are so many people still dying from COVID when it should be like it can be handled now. There's no reason it can't be handled, but it's the same sort of thing. Why were kids dying from measles?
Yeah,
same. It's all based on the same thing, and I think it's really unfortunate. It's anti-information. It's anti-science.
Well, or in the case of the new Maha report, Make America Healthy Again. Making our children healthy again, that was released, Bogus report, right? Yeah. So the original was filled with citations that didn't lead anywhere. Because do you want to finish?
Hey guys, don't do all your research on AI. It's just something that you just can't, you can do some of it, but maybe fact check.
Maybe have like a 24-year-old go through it and make sure it looks okay.
No, I mean it's like and the things that were cited, right? Research were saying that paper doesn't exist.
Yes. Well, the paper doesn't exist. So then they said it was a formatting issue. They cleaned it up and they re-released it and then eliminated the AI hallucinated studies. But even some of the legitimate studies have been mischaracterized according to the authors of the studies themselves.
Because it's written by people who do not know what the fuck they're talking about.
Well, do they not know that, or they don't care? No,
they have a point of view. I guess they don't care, right? Because they have a point of view and they're just saying, well, this works for my point of view. And frankly, they're not educated enough about this stuff. And neither are we, by the way. Heather and Larry should not be writing a report about this. We don't know enough to do that. And they're experts for a reason. And they don't care.
Yourself, Larry. Well, the other thing I will say.
Wait. Next week, people, Heather will release her report.
No.
I can't wait.
PhD. No. I don't know what I have to invent some kind of doctorate that I could fake. But the bigger point is that, it's very willful and very deliberate, and they are counting on you they wanted to have the veneer of respectability they don't care that it's not there because it is propaganda.
It is propaganda.
In service of his or not preordained, but predetermined conclusions.
His wacky, crazy, face and nothing point of view.
Yeah.
Right. And I was in Colorado last week and I was scared because I was in an Uber and they were listening to talk radio and I couldn't tell what kind of talk radio it was, but it had someone from Make America Healthy Again on. And it's the same sort of thing. They just sort of say, well, we just want information out there and people can make their decisions. You're like, man, no.
But that's not what see, the thing is, that's not true either, because when they said we're no longer recommending it, they were basically saying we're not making it available.
Exactly. It is affecting availability. It's affecting coverage.
Yes.
And thus it does have an impact. Let's just say you wanted to make a decision and you're pregnant or you have kids and you want your kids to get it. And then what happens now, though, because they've given an opening to the insurance companies not to cover it, and you say, hey, I want my kid to have it. And they're like, well, no, it's going to cost you hundreds and hundreds of dollars. Well, then you take it off the table.
Right. You take it off the table. But the last thing I want to talk about with RFK this week, busy week again, is
it's always a busy week.
Well, HHS announced that they were canceling a nearly $600 million contract with Moderna for bird flu, right? So if you want to know why you've been paying $10 for eggs, $7 for eggs, it's actually really because of the bird flu. Inflation is,
that's not it.
A piece of it, but that's not really it. It's the
birds were dying. They were culling. They were culling as soon as one bird gets it, they kill the entire thing because it spread so quickly.
Correct.
So they were culling millions and millions.
Right. So Wednesday, Moderna announces that they have been doing these trials on bird flu vaccine. It's promising. And then
so it's late stage. They've done a lot of the work.
Correct.
A lot of the work.
And then yesterday, HHS announces they're canceling the contract entirely, which takes the possibility when we do have an outbreak, which most scientists think is inevitable, that we are no longer going to be the first ones in line to get the vaccine, right? When this happens. And so it just seems so arbitrary and capricious. And by the way, and I'm not saying there's a causal relationship here, but Moderna, and if the name sounds familiar, it's because they were one of the major COVID vaccines that was developed and utilized by millions of Americans and people around the world.
Which under the Trump administration was really important. And they actually pushed that through under the administration.
Operation Warp Speed.
The Operation Warp Speed, which they never want to take credit for, which just whatever. They take credit for everything and they don't. It's so, and so they showed how it can work when needed and when important. And it's always one of those weird things where both science and the government and science relationship, it's part of one of the things where they're going after Harvard and other universities, which is crazy, where that government and science relationship really works. There's a very recent example of it with the COVID vaccines, but like it's become a political thing to have saved millions of lives. It's such a weird thing. They could have actually taken a ton of credit for it. And instead, like in service to the wackos, ran away from something. Right.
Well, it's like there's a little leopard's ate my face kind of thing. And there's an example we'll be talking about a little bit later in this thing, but where Trump was trying to take credit for it. You remember this was in his post-presidency when he was still kind of in the wilderness a bit, and people were booing because all of the disinformation stuff that was happening independent of him.
Right.
Because that took hold. And so they were booing it. And it's like, what, but you still have what, 1 million, it's something like there's like 1 million children with long COVID. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah, and those things are hard to understand. People don't quite understand yet, which is concerning.
So I want to talk a little bit about corruption because, and I wasn't going to talk. I didn't want to talk about it this week, and then I saw a thing in one Punchbowl News, which is a kind of an inside the Beltway, Washington.
Very inside the Beltway.
Very inside the Beltway. So I was reading it. And it was talking about an ethics committee investigation into some Democratic lawmaker from Florida who I honestly have never heard of, which is shocking because I am like one of those people.
I had no idea this person.
I had never heard of this person. And so this person basically did a quid pro quo or is alleged to have done a quid pro quo, Sheila Cheerfulis McCormick, where this person took campaign contributions. So their campaign contributions in exchange for the company that gave them the contributions getting a thing that they wanted. Okay.
I don't understand that, by the way. Campaign contributions aren't that much. It's not that hard to raise.
This is the point. The point is, should that be investigated? 100%. 100%. It is corruption. But let's talk about what's happening at 1600 Pennsylvania. The Trump family, through World Liberty Financial, Edra Klein did a very long a long podcast on it this week, a deep dive, which was fascinating. I highly recommend it. World Liberty Financial, which is a company the Trump family has set up, the Trump crypto coin, which he launched days before he was inaugurated. They just cleared, they have cleared a minimum of $50 million.
Minimum.
The Trump coin.
For doing what?
Exactly. But the Trump coin, you can't even sell it. So if I bought the Trump coin for $10 and then it went up to 20 and I was like, I doubled my investment. I want to sell it. You can't. 75% of the profits from World Liberty Financial go to the family. Okay. And now you have, and this is where we get into the pardon stuff.
Yes.
You have people giving $1 million campaign contributions to get pardons.
It might be
$900,000. And so the question is not why this member of Congress is being investigated, because they should be, but why isn't Trump? The level of corruption is staggering.
It is, and it's transparent.
And he's inviting it.
And it's all in the open, and people talk about it, and then people are like, ugh, it is crazy what would have, if any number of people, any president in the past,
yes,
whether it's George W. Bush or Bill Clinton or Barack Obama or Joe Biden, if any of them had done something like this, I mean, for God's sake, how many investigations went into Hunter Biden over something that completely unclear what relevance it had and whether anyone actually made any money? You were talking about just one thing that's $50 million, and it's like,
who cares? But the thing is, and I didn't know this until a couple days ago, and people are starting to connect these dots. When you pardon these people, some of whom have committed financial crimes, right? Where there are victims, people who they took money from that they shouldn't have taken money from. They committed fraud. And like the former mayor, Michelle Fiore, who was also, she was a mayor in Nevada. She raised $70,000 for police.
Yeah, she was like in a role. I don't think she was.
Yes. I don't think it was, maybe the city council, but she raised $70,000 for a police memorial foundation, pocketed it, used it for all sorts of personal stuff.
I know, probably. I think things like, all kinds of stuff, plastic surgery.
How disgusting is that? So now the police memorial foundation she was raising money for, they're not getting restitution because Trump pardoned her.
Right.
The guy everyone knows the story. His mother gave $1 million to Trump, not him personally. It was a campaign fundraiser. Wrote $1 million check. Her son was in prison for having taken money from his employees. $11 million. But $11 million. Now they don't get restitution.
Those sorts of crimes are not considered crimes by Trump.
Well, and also Supreme Court immunity ruling. Thank you very much. Now he can't be prosecuted for it.
No, I think
he can't be prosecuted for it. So he has carte blanche.
Oh, it's crazy. And getting over people on that sort of stuff and those financial crimes, there's an actual consistency with this. The crypto dude, Justin Sun or whatever, who wouldn't come into the country for years.
Correct.
Until he could actually buy into Trump meme coin. And then he was like, I bought enough. I can go into the country.
By the way, and this is in the Klein podcast. It was his contribution that tipped over the threshold so that the Trumps could unlock taking fees out of it. That was him. And so, he's under investigation for market manipulation, for fraud. But then again, through all the tariff stuff that's happening, that's like market manipulation too.
Right. But and that's the thing. It's like, it's the corruption is extreme. And frankly, I mean, I know we've had a lot of fun with the taco stuff and Trump always chickens out, but I do think there's a lot of market manipulation going on there, right? It's like, yes, let's ask, like, he got so mad. He's like, a nasty question. By the way, ask more nasty questions. That's a good thing. We should ask more nasty questions. And the taco stuff and Trump always chickens out really gets under his skin. But I mean, the whiplash that's happening in the markets, and if you just get a wind of any of that ahead of time, you make bank. And there's like that market manipulation. There was already some evidence of that and concerns about that in the early stuff that was happening in terms of the reversals that Trump was happening. So again, conspiracy theories seem like, oh, I don't want to go there, but I think they're completely valid during these times when people are actually, there are people like Justin Sun and others potentially who benefit greatly from market manipulation at levels that you as a sort of regular Joe Schmo have no idea how valuable it is.
Well, and that undermines the faith and credit in the markets. But I actually want to say it's his own administration. There are people in his administration who personally are selling their personal stakes.
100%.
Pam Bondi sold somewhere between 1 and 5 million, because that's what the disclosure forms are. So that they provide this is why we don't know the exact figure. So she sold between $1 and $5 million in stock the same day that Trump announced his tariffs.
Mm-hmm.
So if you think she didn't,
Martha Stewart went to prison.
Martha Stewart went to prison
for something much smaller. She had to create
get a nice shawl. She got
and look, God bless Martha. She created a whole nativity scene out of whatever clay while she was in prison. She made use of her time.
I mean, it was pretty good.
But it was ridiculous, that level. And she went to prison. These folks are doing it very openly, and and other members of Congress, by the way, as well. I mean, it's not just the administration. There are Republican members of Congress where there's some shady trades that happened right before and after.
It all needs to be banned.
Yes.
Period. The next time we get power, man. Damn.
They shouldn't be able to do this. I mean, that's just sort of like it has to be independent, because there is inside information. And given the government's role now and how it can affect markets.
Yes.
That's just like it's just like I think for trust in government and trust in the markets, you've got to do something about it. Democrats would be smart to actually go after this. It is something that doesn't feel fair and isn't accessible to the vast majority of Americans.
It's not fair, and it should be dealt with both at the congressional level and just across government service. I mean, it's just crazy that they can get away with it, and it's not complicated to understand, right? And so that's, I guess, but we're going to be dealing with it again. I'm sorry to harp on it, but because the Supreme Court invented immunity for president, they invented it
out of nothing.
They invented it, and now we're all paying the price for it. I do want to bring up one other example of pardoning, but as a way of pivoting to our more pop culture segments here, which is Todd and Julie Chrisley, who, what did they steal? This is your realm.
No, it was like, I think
the reality show people.
Yeah, they were sort of Chrisley knows best or something. First of all, gay. It's a whole nother conversation. Because anyway, so prison must have been interesting for him. So it just sort of like the situation was like, they were nobodies. Like they had some like D-list reality show, and really I actually never heard of them until they went to prison. Right? It's like they were actually not important until they were caught trying to, again, tax cheats, trying to manipulate money. I think somewhere around $30 million. A lot of money. So there is that consistency on who will pardon. If it's just financial crimes, it's like, whatever, let's screw over anyone, right? Let's have Trump University. Let's come up with a scam. All that stuff is fair game. Let's screw over people who are less than us. And so they had, I think, maybe 10, 20 years and they were convicted.
Yeah.
And they were just recently pardoned. And like, he made a show of it. There's video of him calling them and pardoning, calling whatever the daughter. And it's just so confusing to me because like the others paid him off. Right. And I don't know what they're not even cool.
You don't look like criminals. That's what he
said.
They're
not even interesting though. I mean, I don't know what he's getting out of it.
Would you put Liberace in jail, Larry? No.
So no. Yes. So that's the intersection of pop culture where these D-list nobodies, and I bet you now they're going to get way more attention for whatever reality.
Have another deal, you know, for reality show.
Yeah, so maybe I don't know. Is Trump going to show up on the show? Because what is he getting out of this? This seems pretty like out of care. Like other than maybe he gets a little extra shine.
Listen, reality show stars look out for each other. You know.
Oh yeah. They got to take care of their own.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. It's probably one of those the most bizarre. I mean, look, there's everything's bizarre, but it's just like, and the guy is so gay.
Listen. I saw that and I was like, really? And because he's married to a woman.
Rainbows flying out of his butt.
Well, it's Pride Month. We're going to see what happens.
Yeah, exactly. He should come out. That should be in the show. The water is warm. Let's go.
We'll see. Maybe you can like get a producer credit on that episode.
I'd take that. You know, I'm not. I'm pretty shameless.
That would be. Yeah.
Do I get a check?
Know.
Do I get a check?
Yeah. You'd like for 10 cents. Okay. One more pop culture moment and then we're out. So I like vaguely was paying attention to this, I don't know, feud.
Oh yeah.
Between modern, I don't know, Audrey McDonald.
Yeah, so like, well, you know, it is a weird dynamic. So Patti LuPone, who, by the way, and I'm gonna get like the gays are gonna attack me. I've never been a huge fan. So gays just come at me.
How dare you?
I know. It's just like because it's just too dramatic. Everything she does is just so over the top. Can't deal with it.
She's in diva camp.
Yeah. So she, in an interview, you know, at some point when you get old, you just have no, even less. Once you're a diva, you have no filter already as a diva, and then an old diva is just, you know, anything can be said. So she went after Keisha Lewis, who has a show right next door to her, and just was like upset because there was noise and blah blah blah. And Keisha was like, "Oh, you need to chill out." And then, you know, it's so insidery stuff. And then she tried to pull rank on her, which was just weird. She's like, she doesn't know shit. She doesn't know anything. And, you know, she's only done like whatever, 7 shows. I've done whatever, 50, 70, whatever. It was just weird behavior. And then
they know each other. They're like friends, or they were. Yeah.
And then she goes after, so she was asked a question about Audra McDonald, who has in many ways, certainly from an awards perspective, far surpassed Patti LuPone, which she probably doesn't like. And they were in a show together at one point. Yes. Just was like dismissive of her, said they're not friends. And then when she was asked about Audra McDonald's Tony-nominated performance in Gypsy, she just was silent, which any of us know when someone who likes to talk chooses to be silent, that is vicious. That is foul. And so, you know, she just like, and so there's actually a huge thing, questions about how racialized it was, and questions about that undermining by Patti LuPone. And so and then Audra McDonald was asked about it by my best friend Gail, and my best friend Gail, and she just took the high road, which was smart because there's no reason for her to sort of go in there. And of course, but like, no, it's just been, and now there's a letter asking to ban her from the Tonys.
Who, to ban Patti LuPone?
Patti LuPone. So co-signed by Courtney Love.
Wait, what? Why does what?
Oh no, it's chaos.
Broadway legend Courtney Love. What the hell?
Everything's off the rails.
Okay.
So it's just unnecessary drama. If you enjoy feuds and if you enjoyed like you know Dynasty as much as I did, you enjoyed this type of dynamic, and it's silly, but I am on Team Audra here. So
I do want to lift up one thing as I'm moving on from the Broadway feud. Next week there is a big protest march happening here in Washington, D.C., organized around veterans who are being absolutely screwed by this administration for reasons that elude certainly me and pretty much every veteran. So that is happening on June 6th, right in the middle of World Pride, which is also happening here in DC. And then on June 14th, No King's Day is happening. So, and it's really actually not happening in DC because Trump is having the Dear Leader military parade. And so
that's right. Is that on Flag Day or?
That's on a Saturday. And so, which is also his birthday. And so
he's a Gemini. Shit.
I know. I have so many Geminis in my life. I'm not even going to get into it, but it's going to be a big deal. And so I do look forward. We saw some expanded protests this week because members were back in district after the passage of the big, beautiful bill. And maybe we should talk next week about some of the lesser known provisions in that, the sort of hidden stuff that many members didn't even know about because they voted on it 10 minutes after they finalized it in the Rules Committee.
And they don't read that shit.
Correct. And so there was a lot of people giving it to their members. Joni Ernst this week. Oh my God, I can't believe we didn't talk about this. Joni Ernst, who is actually a very skilled politician, but she was back in
very natural, which is
very
good.
natural. Was back in district, was trying to defend the Medicaid cuts in the bill, and ended up saying when people said people would die, people are screaming, people will die. We're all gonna die.
Whoa, girl!
Feels like the wrong answer.
On video, y'all. On video. So Joni Ernst is up for re-election next year. So there have been rumors about her retiring.
Well, you know what? There are a couple of strong people running in Iowa for that seat, and it's going to be interesting because she really, I think she has lost her way since the Pete Hegseth nomination, and she was kind of forced to support him, even though clearly she had some pretty significant concerns, rightly so, by the way.
I mean, she served.
Yeah. And focused on sexual assault. And he hates women in the military and has his own issues with sexual assault in women. And here we are. But we are going to see a lot more pushback and defiance happening in the coming weeks from the American people, because that is where we're seeing it actually grow versus where some of the institutions are wobbling a little bit.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting. What I find encouraging is like people, in some ways like that Democratic base is all sort of still looking at its wounds and just can't get over itself. So just get over yourselves, people. But it's people who are coming to the realization that this isn't working for them. It's not what they actually voted for. It's actually people who did vote affirmatively for Trump or supported Trump that are realizing especially from a class perspective, they are completely getting fucked.
Yeah, they are. And it's our job to be bringing people together to sit in community because we are all outside the circle. If we are not providing $1 million paychecks,
I did not go to the meme coin gala. Not invited.
No, well, it sounds like the food was bad. So I feel like you dodged a bullet on that one. Larry, my drink is empty and
done.
You're done. Have a great weekend. We'll see you all next week.
Thank y'all.
Bye.